welcome to the Wednesday, March 19th, 2014 board meeting of the Lake City Development Corporation. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Brad, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. First agenda item is an opportunity for public comment, and I want to say at this point that we have a special presentation from Dr. Jerry Beck a little bit later, and people will have an opportunity to ask questions of Dr. Beck at that time. But if you have another topic you want to address us on right now, you're most welcome to step forward and do that. All right, everyone's bashful, so we'll go on to the approval of minutes. So we have two sets of minutes to approve. February 19th, 2014 board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any corrections, comments, or questions, or debate? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next will be February 27th, 2014, Lake City Development Corporation City Council workshop minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and second to approve those minutes. Any corrections or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, that takes us to our presentation by Dr. Jerry Beck. Dr. Beck, please join us at the table if you would. And I don't have much of a long resume for you, but I know that you've been a long time with the College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls as an administrator, most recently as I guess, retired president there.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
You have some property up here that brings you up here, and I guess you have some roots up here as well. So
I do.
Thank you for coming up. We've invited Dr. Beck up. He's also was instrumental in putting together, I'll get the acronym and the name wrong, but the Southern Idaho Regional Economic Development Organization that is, I think, perhaps akin to our Jobs Plus organization here with maybe a larger footprint in Southern Idaho. So he's been gracious enough to come, and thanks to Mick for kind of connecting us and sharing a little bit about how that organization got put together and their successes and how it operates. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I do have a little bit of a background here. My grandmother is buried here in the cemetery at St. Thomas, and my dad grew up here in Coeur d'Alene. And looking at the pictures around the wall, I remember the carnival out on the dock and being able to come up and ride the Ferris wheel, and particularly the bumper cars was my favorite. And so always look forward to coming to Coeur d'Alene and having a good time. We are property owners in the area. We own a home out at Hayden Lake. We purchased that about 10 years ago and are in present time of visiting Home Depot and Lowe's twice a day as we rebuild it. There's been a 3-year process going on. Well, first off, I'd like to congratulate you on a beautiful city. Coeur d'Alene is what a lot of communities would like to be as you drive into this community. It's one of the things I wish that we had done better in the southern Idaho area is our gateway into our city. We just did not do the forethought and the planning that you have. When you come into the city from all directions, you just have a nice feel about it. And surrounding cities are doing the same thing, so I'd like to congratulate you on that. We, approximately 12 years ago, were not real happy with what we were finding our success rate of landing new companies, retaining companies in the Magic Valley area. It just seemed like our way of doing business was not working as well as it had in previous years. 6, 8 of us would get on an airplane, fly to some company, tell them what a wonderful place we were to come live, and that they ought to come visit and put their business there in the Magic Valley. And we just were not being able to close deals. What we found out fairly quickly was that most of these companies knew more about us than we knew about ourselves based upon what was available on the internet and what they could study and the companies that they had hired as far as site consultants and that type of thing. So we thought we probably better get a little more sophisticated than what we were. The plane rides were fun, but quite frankly, we just weren't being very successful at all. We hired a group called Lockwood Green, and that was paid for by cities and counties. The college did participate a bit in that. to tell us what we could be and what we couldn't be in the Magic Valley. And I'll have to say that when the report came back, it was pretty disturbing about some of the things we couldn't be. We didn't have a good air transportation system. I mean, if you die in Twin Falls, you're going to go through Salt Lake City, whether you're going to heaven or hell. That's all there is to it. And you're only going to get a chance to go once a day. And so that was a pretty substantial blow to us, that was going to be a pretty downside thing. On the upside, however, was that we were within overnight to Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, San Diego, Denver, Phoenix. And that was something we hadn't thought a lot about. And you think about, that was just about the time just-in-time delivery was starting to get really kind of exciting. We had a lot of land, cheap building space. So from a warehousing standpoint, we were in a fairly good standpoint. And from a freeway standpoint, we were pretty good. The roadway was open year-round, and we could hit all those major markets overnight. So it was a place that, you know, it was companies who had distribution centers. It was a good place for us to consider, to think about. The second biggest thing that came back in that, and it was 8, I think, areas that they said we'd be good at, and I'm not going to list them, you can get a copy of the report and look at them, was that we needed to stop fighting with one another and realize that we were a region, and that each and every community within our region brought value, and that our goal needed to be that when we got a company to come visit, don't let them leave town until they site in one of our partner organizations or city. Excuse me, already dry, not used to this. Been retired 6 months. So the who was the 8 counties that surround the Magic Valley. We've never had all 8 counties involved. We've always had Twin Falls, Jerome, Cassia, Minidoka, Gooding. Blaine County has come and went and come again. That's, for those of you who are not familiar with that area, that's world-famous Sun Valley, or I always refer to it as North Los Angeles. And then we also have Lincoln County and Elmore County, which is just a sliver, which is about 40 miles outside of Boise. Really makes sense for them to be with the Boise group more than it does us. Lincoln is a very rural county, very sparsely populated. Up where Fairfield is, there's a ski resort there, but a small one. And they have never been involved with us. We had a rule that if the county joined, the city had to join. And as the Lockwood Green Study had put together, there was fees established for what everybody would pay. It was pretty well based upon population of the cities and counties. It was interesting at that particular time that when we all came together, and I tried to relate this yesterday, of what caused all the divisiveness over the years. Was it the local football teams? Was it the tariff that we charged on the bridge between Jerome and Twin Falls? Was it the location of the airport? These were all things that had really divided the community and caused a lot of issues. But probably we had found more things to argue and fight about than we had ever determined we could work together on. So this was the first time that everybody sat around the table looking at their hold cards, all of us wanting a better future for our children, for our grandchildren, and for ourselves. I remember back in '78, I made the comment once, last one out of Twin would just go ahead and flip off the light switch because we were in a dying area. We were losing businesses, we were not gaining in population, and we just were not doing well at all. So we did come together, we did sign an agreement. We asked people for 3 years commitment, and the people who are eligible to be able to be involved in SIDU, which is Southern Idaho Economic Development Organization. Some people say CEDO, other ones say SIDU, was the cities, the counties, utilities, the college, and elected officials. There was two additional groups that I really wanted and didn't get. One was the realtors. If anybody has more to gain out of this whole thing, was realtors, because name a company coming to town with 50, 75 new employees, they do well. And so that was an association, and more importantly, the medical community, the target you. One of the things we had agreed, we were only going to recruit people who had livable wage and a full fringe benefit package, including health insurance. And if you look back 12 years ago in the Magic Valley, we were one of the lowest areas in the state of employer health insurance being provided for employees. In fact, I often said that we would see people leave a $14 an hour job, go to a $10 an hour job because it had health benefits. And so those were some of the ground rules. Another ground rule, and this goes back to Lockwood Green, we would not chase retail. Retail, we thought, would follow the other types of jobs we were trying to bring in. And again, SEDU's major focus was to promote the area, to bring people to the area, and then to have what we called ready teams available in each one of the cities and counties to present what they had to offer to the company that was looking to locate in the area. Keep in mind, those companies will always give you some things that they're looking for. Either they want a building already built, or they don't want one. They want free dirt. They want tax relief. They want to know about your employment. They want to know if there's any bond issues coming up that we should be aware of, all of those types of things. So the second part of the SEDU responsibility was to help communities put together ready teams. You all serve on this board. If you had somebody coming to visit Coeur d'Alene, big thing, 500 new jobs, $38 million plant, you'd all want to be involved. You'd all want to be able to sit at the table. And that was the other thing we said. Yes, SEDU, with its 22 to 28 members, will be involved, but the only people that will be in the room are those that we need to be there. And so generally, when we were meeting with companies, there was no more than about 4 or 5 people. And those 4 or 5 people knew what their role was in the room, what they could say, what they couldn't say. The reason why I bring that up is you don't have to be number one in all the areas. You don't have to be number one in land cost. You don't have to be number one in the building. You don't have to be number one in cost for power. You can't be last. You just have to be good enough to be able to stay at the table. They do their cut, and there was 6 at the table. Now there's only 4 at the table. 4 communities left. You're still not number one, but you're good enough to stay at the table. The next round, you're at 2. There's only 2 people at the table. I told the story yesterday that I remember when we were dealing with the yogurt manufacturer. There's 2 communities left, Reno, Nevada, and Twin Falls, Idaho. This plant is 10 times the size of our local mall. It's going to hire 500 people. Good jobs, good benefits. We already have 500,000 cows. Going to need a couple hundred more thousand. That we figured we had land out in the Mini-Cache area. A lot of the dairy people wanted to expand, so that would be there. As far as the trucking of the milk and going to California and the various locations that we didn't use, that was going to work out. We just had a couple of issues that Nevada had on us that were just a little bit better. But their milk was going to come from California. And fortunately, the president of the company, I asked when he got down to Reno, because he was going there the next day, if he would just take the time to drive over Donner Summit and back. Just needed him to take that drive one time. And I think that that was one of the things that helped us seal the deal, was that the infrastructure for the roads, he could see, he had to have milk every day. And there was going to be days he wasn't going to have milk coming over that pass. Again, we hadn't been first along the way. In fact, we thought we were kind of written off about halfway through the process, but we were still at the table hanging on with our fingertips. But it was so important not to have people in the room that got too excited outside because we still had to put together some very significant land deals. And of course, when speculation starts happening on land, you all know what happens to the value and whether or not you can be competitive or not. And you also start talking about the infrastructure was substantial sewage lines that had to be put in, about $18 million. We really didn't need to have the fight with the community prior to at least being able to have the opportunity to say, yes, we would like to have the company come, and yes, they would like to come. So many times it's better to have that smaller group. So again, part of the SADU's responsibility was to train those people who would be on the ready teams. We also came to an agreement that we had to support one another. This was the toughest part. I may not have really liked what was going on with urban renewal. Or I may have. Made no difference. If I had an issue, I'd need to go down and talk to them and talk about what the issues were and not make it a nuclear war on the front page of the local paper. We had to get better at working out our differences with one another. And I would say that that was one of our major factors. Hilux Poly, this is a company that builds the plastic bags at grocery stores, Home Depot. They build them by the cajillion. When they came to our area, they came to look at 2 cities, but when we showed them a third site, which was a city they had not planned on looking at, it had the rail spur, it had the building, and it was the site that they wanted. The other 2 cities, as disappointed as they were, had also done a lot of the research that we needed to put the balance of the deal together. Knowing that they did not have the rail spur, knowing that they didn't have the building, they then helped, it was Jerome, put together the business plan to locate that company there. I've said many times that we would have never gotten that company if we wouldn't have had the cooperation from the other 2 cities, because Jerome at the particular time did not have the infrastructure to put the deal together. And that's the beauty of working together when you can all have the groundbreaking, you're all there together, and you know that it happened because you all worked together. It wasn't one organization. It was counties and cities and people from all the different areas. That combined with the workforce development dollars that we all have available to us. We have Business Plus, which is an organization that raises money that we use to incentivize or buy infrastructure for companies coming in. Not huge things, but you know, the last thing I can remember right off the top of my head was a $50,000 generator we had to buy for Dell, and we had run out of money every place else, and we used the Business Plus monies for that. Urban renewal. In the state of Idaho, we don't have a lot of the incentives that a lot of our sister states have. I think it was about 6.5, 7 years ago when Utah made the decision that economic development and all the personnel that was involved in it was pretty costly. So they pretty well eliminated it and just put all that money in the bank and then started throwing money at businesses wanting to come in. That's pretty powerful. When you've got a person looking at Payson, Utah or Filer, Idaho, and they put $2.5 million cash on the table, and you say, well, we'll train your workforce for you. They go home and look at the bank and think that they can train the workforce for $500,000 and still have $2 million. So those are some of the things that we have to recognize that are limits in Idaho. And so the things that we do have available for us, we have to use the best we possibly can. And we have been very fortunate to have a great relationship with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Business Plus 2 has been fortunate based upon the number of successes we've had. People have been willing to donate to that, and we have a pretty good nest egg there. And then, of course, urban renewal is one of those things, and I told Tony this yesterday, that urban renewal needs to be used anytime you can make something happen that you couldn't have made it happen without it. And I get very controversial comments back when I say that. But, you know, the purpose of trying to get something started, particularly when we're in recession. Dell came to Twin Falls at the end of the recession before this one. In fact, it was the first Fortune 50 company that had expanded after that recession. And our home values shot up. Our infrastructure looked better. People were happier. It was raises. It was like a big party for about 6 months. And many times we get in these downturns that are so long and so deep that sometimes we just need to see some earth being moved and some things being built. You know, it's great to look out this back window. You got some things happening. I have to bring my grandchildren up and show them what construction looks like because we haven't had a lot of it recently. So with that, I can take questions. I see one thing on here I did want to say. The SADU board operates predominantly with a 5-member executive team. To get 22 to 28 members to agree upon anything, pretty tough. So most all of the decisions had been made fairly quickly, were done by the executive board. The membership, of course, if they didn't agree with the executive board, they threw us out of office and we got new executive members. But for the most part, we kept in mind always that our job was to bring people to the community to take a look. Our job was to make sure our communities, each one of the cities, were trained to be able to put their best foot forward, and that as a company started to lean in one direction, to get the rest of the team behind that one direction to try and get the deal closed. So with that, I'll take questions.
Dr. Beck, just one, if I could ask you, that a lot of the buzz around activity in Twin Falls, it has been around the Chobani plant and the, I think Cliff Bars is coming. Is that what it is?
The what?
What's the next company? Cliff?
Cliff Bar.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could briefly tell the board and the audience kind of how the Twin Falls Urban Renewal Agency weighed in on that particular opportunity.
Well, Cliff Bar, because I have actually been gone for about a year from the actual college, so I can't speak too much to that. I can speak to the Chobani quite a bit. As we got closer to Chobani, and keep in mind, Twin Falls was not a site that Chobani came to look at. That's the first thing. And that, in fact, Twin Falls didn't even have a proposal on the table. The first 2 sites we showed them, they were not overly thrilled with. Those of you who have ever been down in our canyon at Blue Lakes Country Club, we were down there having dinner. The CEO of the company is standing there looking out over where the fish are there in beautiful clean water, and he turns around and he says, "Why isn't Twin Falls come forward with a project?" And we had nobody in the room from Twin City or county because it was, again, and we said, well, it has to do with our sewage treatment plant does not have the capacity to deal with what you had put in your prerequisites. And he said, well, what if we pre-treat? I said, I don't know. Have to ask the city. He said, would you? So we asked the city that evening whether they could put something together. They did. Immediately, even with the pre-treat, they knew still that they were going to have to do some expansion on the sewage, and where they wanted to site the plant was about as far away from our sewage plant as you could possibly get. If you're familiar with Twin Falls, out by Kimberly is where they were going to site this operation, and the sewage plant is in the canyon. I'm going to guess that's probably about 6-7 miles. And this was going to require a fairly significant pipe. It was $18 million, and that's where we started into the whole issue with looking for where can we put this together and make it work, and urban renewal was one of the funding sources to put that together. The other thing that they wanted was, after they had pretty well said that, yeah, we kind of like this, They wanted an industrial park. And keep in mind, the factory is already huge. Huge. In fact, you drive by and you think, what is that thing? Looks like a medical facility that goes on and on and on. But they had planned to bring other companies that were related to their company, the berry companies, the container companies with them, and they wanted to site them on that same site. By the way, this is the second time that happened. When we brought Jayco to the Twin Falls area, Jayco also wanted an industrial park and also wanted to be able to site the axle manufacturer, the air conditioning manufacturer, the cabinetry. So it was a critical part because we wouldn't have been able to put the deal together without it. I guess we could have went for bond levy. But timing is one of those things that, keep in mind, this plant, from the day they said yes, this plant was built in less than 1 year. And it's, again, our mall is about, I'm going to say about square footage, is about the same size as the Spokane Valley Mall. This building is 10 times that size. And they did complete that in under a year. I'm still just...
Thank you. Other questions of Dr. Beck from the board, and then we'll go to the audience. While you're thinking back, if you have questions out in the audience, we have a microphone up here. If you could just come up to the microphone and introduce your... Tony?
I have a question. Dr. Beck, you mentioned Business Plus.
Yes.
So I assume that is private funds that are raised that are in a kind of a kitty to help close deals?
Exactly. It's out of our chamber. It started about 15 years ago, and they're on Business Plus 4, I believe, now, so they're doing another round of funding right now. And it has been hugely successful from the standpoint that that money doesn't have the strings tied to it that a lot of the other dollars and cents that you have to work with do. And usually when you're right at the tail end of closing a deal, you're talking, the Dale deal, I was in Round Rock talking back with the state of Idaho and stuff, but we were making decisions that we're going to make this thing work or not work over the next 2 hours. And that last little generator thing was kind of a stumbling block because I'm sitting there thinking, well, I can't write a check for $50,000. And if I do say we'll write a check for $50,000, somebody's going to ask me, well, just where's that coming from? And I didn't have it in my personal account, and I didn't know anybody who I thought could give us that right away. And so Business 2, at that time it was Business 2, we called, and they said, yes, if that's the deal breaker, yes, we'll do that.
Kerry, I'm going to ask you a question a little bit about something I know you have a great interest in, that's politics. Tell me, how is it that the legislative delegation from your area works so well together and is so cooperative, and they are so involved in leadership? And I think that's one of the reasons why you see so much cooperation with state agencies, is because you have that political capital in Boise coming from your area. Give us some insight, your thoughts on that.
Well, first off, when I told you about the membership at SADU, we looked at, okay, do we put a legislator on there or two? And we decided that there would be times that we would need help. And so we decided we would, and then the question became, who are you going to invite? So we decided that Senator Cameron was probably the most powerful one in the group, and he could help us a whole lot more than he could ever hurt us. And so we asked him to be in the SADU group. He willingly did that. Keep in mind, his county and city was also a member over in the Rupert area, Minidoka County. And we had a couple of successes right off the bat over there. That didn't hurt anything. But I think that, and I'll tell the story about Dell. When Dell finally got to the point at which we were down to a couple of issues, one was that they wanted us to test all the high school students, juniors and seniors, to see what their, what I call it, propeller head factor was. Were these people who could come out of high school and go to work for a computer corporation? Now, can you imagine going out and asking high school principals that you get this private company, can't tell you who it is, but they want to come in and test juniors and seniors? So that was one of the big issues there, and we finally got them to agree to do that by telling Jerome that Twin Falls had agreed to do it, and then we weren't told Twin that Jerome had agreed to do it, and we did it at the same time, so it worked out. But back to the whole legislative group. If, in fact, you have cities and counties at the table working together for the betterment of the community, the betterment of the region, if you've got your leadership team in place, and we realize we have some powerful people in the Magic Valley who's been in office a long time, who have said that we need to have growth in our economy. Suddenly people start falling into line that may have been out of line before, or just wanted to lob the grenade to see what would happen. And I would say that we always let them know ahead of time. We brought them in, let them ask us questions. There's always that whole issue when you're dealing with a company who doesn't want to be identified as to how do you make sure that they understand we're not supposed to talk about this outside the room. What do you do about open meeting laws? All of those various things to get these things to happen. But I think that once the rest of us agreed that the fighting had to stop, that we had to support one another, and we had to take a regional approach, then I think we were pretty unified. It's pretty interesting right now to me that the whole guns on campus issue, you've all probably followed that a little bit, that kind of almost came down to a witness test of if you're a Republican, you've got to support that. This is the first time I've seen the Magic Valley delegation break ranks on that. We had two of our, Maxine Bell and Lance Cloud, both voted that would be a no. That's kind of interesting that on all the other issues, they probably would have hung in there, but because the college was involved, the board was against it, students were against it, faculty and staff were against it, they chose to hang with that whole thing. And again, I think that that was part of that whole thing about trying to work together about what is the best thing to do for the community. Not what's best for me or what's best for you, but what is best for our community? What is best for the college? And when it came down to economic development, if we had a company and we were able to set people at the end of the table and say, this is the number of jobs, this is the amount they're going to pay, this is the fringe benefit package, this is the assurances we have that they're going to be here for X number of years, this is their financials. What else do you need to know to be able to hang with us and say, we should do this?
Dr. Beck?
Yes.
When you were putting your group together, was the college, were you the lead? Who took the lead to put this regional group together?
Well, I was the vice president at that particular time, and I had a really smart boss. And he stood up and he said he'd take lead, and they pointed at me and he says, you're the chairman. I think that President Meyerhofer at that particular time could see that we were probably the only neutral party. Keep in mind, somebody has to be kind of the watchdog, and if somebody misbehaves, somebody has to correct that. And I told the group yesterday, I was talking to your chairman and Tony, and I told him that was not a fun job when you had to go out and talk to a city or a county or somebody in the city or county and tell them that they had misstepped. That I told the story that we had a realtor that got on an airplane and flew to California because he found out about who the company was through one of our meetings and tried to sell the building in his community. I was the one who got to go talk with him about that. If you have a city official who is not happy because, you know, this company came to look at our community, what are they doing in a Y community now? How did that happen? You know, understanding that the objective here is to get them to locate in Region 4. And your community's proposal that set forward was a good one, but it wasn't good enough. It wouldn't keep us at the table. And again, I can't stress enough, you got to stay at the table. If they're no longer calling you, you're done. And these processes take a long time anymore. And they're business decisions. I said, once upon a time, some of these decisions were made based upon people working with people. They liked who you were. They thought you had a nice community, great place to live. Most of these decisions today of these types of companies are based on the finances and long-term profitability for that company. And everybody has a nice place to live. It's like woebegone. We all have children above average. And so you've got to just, work towards that. Yes?
Sir, first of all, thank you for sharing this journey with us. It's very, very interesting and educational. How do these companies measure quality of life, and where does that figure in the cards that are dealt out as far as how important that is, or how many have made the decision, say, to locate in the valley based upon the quality of life that was afforded there, maybe compared to some of the other locations they were considering? Zero?
It all came down to, first off, I would say every one of these companies were looking at Idaho to begin with. Keep in mind, they're going to look at your state first off. And we have a great thing in this state. I tell the governor this every time I see him, and that's we have a balanced budget. I can't tell you that when we're up against a state and that state has debt or they are not balanced, they're not at the table generally the next meeting. They're not there. Because companies realize that the state's going to have to balance the budget. Who's that going to be balanced based upon what? So that's the first issue. Companies are concerned about health, hospital infrastructures, indigent care. They're a little bit concerned about schools, but quite frankly, most of that information they can pull off the internet. But they are kind of interested about location of where the facility would be, where the housing is. We talk to people a lot about, you can pay somebody $35,000 a year, give them full fringe benefits, and they can buy a home in the Magic Valley. Once they've bought a home, you've pretty well got a long-term employee. And when you look at some of the companies we recruited, some of the issues they had were that their people were so mobile that a 50-cent an hour differential in pay would cause them to leave and move to another company. And their products were complicated enough that the training cost was high enough that that was a fairly significant concern. You have the reputation here of having really high real estate values. But the truth of the matter is, if you get off the lake and get down into your subdivisions, your real estate values are no different here than in Magic Valley. But you definitely have a perception difference. And that's one of the things I would tell you that, somebody just pulling up your website, looking around, pulling up the magazines and thumbing through them, you'd get pretty discouraged pretty quick.
Lots of high-end
Interesting.
articles in there, yeah.
It looks like Lake Tahoe, what you're saying to somebody who could work for me and afford to live there.
But, I mean, there's nice subdivisions. You go out Ramsey and look at some of the subdivisions out in there and drive out in there and look at the homes and the prices of them per square footage. You're in the ballpark.
No, you're correct. But the perception is interesting.
What role did the educational opportunities that CSI could afford play into some of the company's decisions?
Well, keep in mind that, the workforce development dollars were the one thing that we had to be able to work with. So we would go to companies and say, what is it that you need? Many colleges will go and say, this is what we have, pick from our catalog. We would always go say, okay, where's your most efficient plant? Because we're going to send a team to that plant, and we're going to look at what they do. That has worked well for us in some cases. With Hilux Poly, it was a complete disaster. We went to their plant. They said, this is what we do. We start building the plant. First pieces of equipment show up, and rather than being equipment that always related, I'm an old auto mechanic, about adjusting the old lifters where you had the feeler gauge and you stuck it in there and then adjusted the bolt accordingly. These bags, for the thickness, they would have bolts that you'd adjust on the machine. Well, this machine doesn't have a damn bolt on it. It's all computerized. Well, we had been training people in the old equipment, looking for people with the old skills, and we're like 2 months from opening, and we don't have anybody in the pipeline that can run this stuff. And so from a college standpoint, this is the first time I did that. I don't think I've ever told Joe this story. I hired a headhunter to go steal employees outside the state of Idaho, and we were very successful. In fact, Hilux Poly still just says, we're the best thing for popcorn, and they give us all the credit for training these people. We didn't train them. We went out and stole them. We didn't have time to train people in electronic computer controls. We had 2 months. We went out and talked to them about cost of living, cost of buying a house, what the salaries were going to be, new plant, high-tech equipment. Your property taxes are continuing to go up in California, and there's going to be an earthquake next week.
And no rain.
Yeah. But the college has been influential in those decisions as far as providing the workforce training. Those dollars that came from the workforce training at Department of Labor are very important. And then this is prior to Joe's time, so he doesn't know this, but I think it was my second year as president. Frank Henderson will remember this. We were going to get rewarded for a job well done in economic development. And they basically said, what can we do to help you? And I said, I need some cash to be able to train companies with.
Dr. Beck, could you speak up just a little bit?
We needed some cash to be able to work with companies with, because workforce development funds are after the fact. And we needed something on the front side. So the legislature gave us $50,000 of workforce development training dollars that's in our line item budget for that. If we don't use that, we carry it forward. And so carry it forward through years, you have $150,000 there to be able to do that training. Again, that caught fire with our local delegation, and we were able to also sell it to other surrounding delegations and got that put into our base budget. And it's not a lot of money, but quite frankly, it helped a lot. That time I had to hire that headhunter, I didn't have time to go through everything that a college has to go through to get. I mean, I needed a person yet this afternoon.
Dr. Beck, let me ask you real quick. Did you have any issues with the College of Southern Idaho with various communities, pushing and pulling and tugging to get different programs located in their community, or different factions, political factions, with some infighting as to what the college should be doing or not doing, or what programs it should have? Did you have anything like that to deal with that you had to solve?
25 years ago, we were fortunate to get 2 Title III grants back-to-back. And those grants, they were sizable, over $1 million apiece. That was a lot of money back then. We were able to establish off-campus centers strategically within a 13-mile radius of where the population bases were. And so that had pretty well been taken care of. The issue about full-time training programs being there, we addressed that with, yes, we will put a full-time training program there as long as it is cost-effective. So if you want a training program on cabinet building for trailer house manufacturing, we'll put it there. You've got to make sure we have 25 students in it. You got to make sure that we're graduating at least 22 of them. We got to place 20 of them, and they got to be at a livable wage with fringe benefits. We'll put the program there. Anything less than that, it'll be there until that doesn't happen, then it'll come out of there. We've been successful with that model. Here in the Valley, I know that North Idaho College has been expanding into your outlying areas. That's a very positive thing, I think, for you. I think Joe does know this. Our out-of-county billings, and keep in mind, your Kootenai County pays a property tax. When Sandpoint County, when you do something for them, they have to pay by the credit back to the college. I don't know what your billings are, 600,000? Your out-of-county billings for?
In terms of the cost?
No, how much do you get from the counties surrounding Kootenai?
Well, it's $500 per student per semester, up to a total of $3,000 for the student in total. And then our Sandpoint Center, they've provided us $40,000 a year towards the rental cost of that.
And so it's growing for him, but 20 years ago, after we opened these, it's close to a $3 million operation for the College of Southern Idaho now, because those centers are mature. In fact, the Burley Center is larger than the campus was when it opened. In fact, I worry about the Burley Center deciding they want to become their own community college. They have 1,300 students. So,
How many total jobs?
over that period of time, I should know that figure, and I've heard it, but I don't want to say it because I don't know that I'm right, but I can get that for you. It's a lot. In fact, it's staggering. They just did it on their 10-year anniversary. We added it up, and it was impressive.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Gary, come on up and catch a microphone. Give us your name, if you would, for the folks at home.
Thank you. Dr. Beck, I was curious if...
Your name, Gary.
Oh, Gary Young. Do you need my address?
Well, just who is your business association with, maybe?
Plug it.
Plug your business.
I'm with Veritas. We're land use planning and landscape architecture company in Coeur d'Alene. I was curious along those lines if you also, in addition to your economic development efforts, if you had to update your land use planning, your long-range planning efforts with the various counties and cities that you worked with to prepare them for, I'm assuming, what was a ripple effect of housing and other types of development.
The role for SEDU was to train the READY teams. Part of that READY team was to do the assessment of how well they were prepared to be able to put a package together to have a company look at it. What we found very quickly was some of those communities were not ready at all. They didn't know what their sewage capacity was. They didn't know whether they had water lines out there. They didn't know all of those things. So yes, it did have the ripple effect, but the SEDU organization did not take responsibility for that. We took responsibility to tell them they didn't have it and they needed to get it, but they're the ones who had to move forward and get that.
Anybody else? Okay. Dr. Beck, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and insights with us.
Again, thank you for the invitation. It's a wonderful community here. We enjoy it.
And we welcome you to it.
Thank you.
All right. So, next item of business is the Alice Mills Site Eligibility Analysis Report. We have Cynthia Rayburn here, I think, from the Panhandle Area Council to present on that.
Yes.
Cynthia, welcome. Shoot, I gotta go.
Oh, great, thank you.
Moving time.
Yep.
Did everyone get a copy before we started the report? I think I went around to everyone. Okay. Ready?
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And first, I'd like to say, most of all, thank you for retaining Panhandle Area Council to prepare this update. We, as an organization, look forward to a renewed involvement with LCDC as we move toward our charter goals of economic development and workforce training and urban renewal. So we're thrilled to be part of this. The report tonight is simply an update of an original report done in 2003. At that time, the report was designed to determine if this particular site, which is come to known as the Atlas Mill site, should be part of an urban renewal district. There are certain qualifications for any site to be included in an urban renewal district. At that time, it was in and out of the report. It wasn't directly addressed. And so this update addresses this particular site. I have the report here in front of us. We'll page through, and there are pictures on the screen of the boundaries. You can see the entire urban renewal district. There are two districts we'll talk about. The mill site sits in the middle of one, and the boundary you can see there. It's smack in the middle of that particular one, but it was not part of the original analysis. Since then, as most of us know, in the last few years, that mill and related outbuildings and other structures have been completely razed. Right now there's a small outbuilding, there's a decrepit parking lot, and that's all that's left of that site. So the focus of this report, as I said, is determined if this particular property could be part of an urban renewal district. It is bounded by Celtice Way on the north, the Spokane River on the south, Riverstone Development to the east, and the U.S. Bank Service Facility on the west. And we can just start paging through this report if you turn to page, what is known as page 2. The reason that this is on the table, the reason the report is being updated, and the determination to put it in an urban renewal district or not, to see if it qualifies, there's quite a bit of discussion in the public and private sectors for future use of the site. If the site can be part of an urban renewal district, there are definite financing and tax issues related to that. Use of the site is not typically determined or regulated by an urban renewal district unless it's part of that district's formation in the beginning. Use of that is not determined by this particular urban renewal district. And thank you to Tony for doing all the high-tech work. I appreciate that. He's in charge of the slides. There are pictures in the back of your pamphlet. They are slightly different, doing the low-tech version of color photos in the back. So you can refer to those as well. The scope of work of this particular report, again, is to see the physical changes to the site itself. Then we have to use various code sections to determine if this should be, if it can be part of the urban renewal district. On March 13th, some Panhandle Area Council staff members went out to the site, took pictures, visual inspection, walked around in the mud and debris to see what was really out there physically to determine what remains. There are several dirt roads through, and it's bordered by about 30 acres currently owned by Washington Trust Bank. And on the other side, about 40 acres owned by Stimson Lumber. They kept that for their own private use. The terrain is varied. Some is flat, some is elevated. The dirt roads crisscross. Some are usable, some are pretty rough. The parking lot itself that's left is very rough, cracked and weed infested. The driveways that went to prior office buildings are there, but they're cement and they're, again, in bad disrepair. The only thing that was not reviewed specifically at the site are underground utilities and infrastructure, water, sewer, gas. It was not part of the scope of this report. That's a completely different, almost engineering study, especially the water sewer pipes. But we can ascertain that based on the surface condition of the property, the infrastructure would be as challenged as the surface. Particularly, it's not been used in a number of years. I'm turning now to page 4 of your report. The basis for our determination is the physical condition as well as applicable Idaho code. The Idaho laws, there are two in question here. They are the Idaho Urban Renewal Law and the Idaho Economic Development Act. The Idaho Urban Renewal states, an urban renewal project shall not be planned or initiated unless the local governing body has, by resolution, determined such an area to be deteriorated or deteriorating, or a combination thereof, and designated such area as appropriate for an urban renewal project. So as I was saying, there must be some physical characteristics that allow it to be part of a renewal district. In this case, raw land, often an urban renewal district will have dilapidated or deteriorating physical structures. When you're looking at raw land, the other questions become physical condition of that property. In this case, there are issues of, I'm at the bottom of page 4 now, open land area. There are issues of refuse, of prior timber, of dirt that's been put into large piles as the structures were raised. There's some amount of refuse from the prior structures that was not cleared away. Again, there are issues possibly of infrastructure damage. Page 5 now. When you have open land such as this, it may be acquired by organizations such as LCDC and developed for non-residential use. That would be, I believe, the zoning for this and the intention. If it's needed to resolve various problems associated with the land or the infrastructure. And in this case, all of that could be addressed regarding this particular property. Lack of adequate water and sewer facilities, for example, is a perfect example that retards use of this property. We cannot determine the exact state of the infrastructure because, as I said, we weren't retained nor an engineering firm to assess that. But lack of current infrastructure to this large site is clearly not available and therefore couldn't be developed in its current state for residential or non-residential use. Economic disuse, unsuitable topography, environmental issues. We're not sure what's left in some of these refuse piles. And public conditions also impede development of the area in its current state. Again, at the bottom of page 5, there's a list of items we need to look at when determining if a property, particularly vacant land, and vacant land that's been in disrepair for a number of years, can be considered part of a renewal district. In this case, regarding this particular property, a substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures. Well, there aren't any. They were all raised after 2003, but the remaining structures, the parking lot, as I mentioned, some of the cement streets and access ways are in very bad condition. A predominance of defective or inadequate street layout. Celtice Way on the west and Old Atlas Road are the streets that serve the area, but they are adequate in their location, but they are certainly not adequate in their current service to the entire area or in their current state of disrepair. Faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequate accessibility, or usefulness. Only 2 parcels here exist in the site area, one being 30 acres and one 40, and that's not suitable for this particular parcel, and they're also owned by private parties. On page 6, unsanitary or unsafe conditions. This particular poor piece of property has been let go, and there have been various things happening there that have not been healthy for it. There are a number of conditions that apply to this particular site regarding junk that was left or added, trash, weeds, some of them possibly noxious weeds. These are in violation of city sanitation code. We don't know if they were left there as a result of the raising or if it appears things may have been left there since, not related to the site. Unsafe conditions within the area, including very steep topography. When the buildings were raised and other things were changed, very large mounds of dirt and refuse and timber were left, and you can't do anything with them as they sit. Although I did see some kids out there with some kind of dune buggy things. I'm not sure that's safe or advisable. Environmental contamination from the mill operations, there has not been a metals study or that kind of thing, pollutants that might have been a result of the raising. And trash, lots of trash out there. Deterioration of the site and other improvements. And in this case, the term other improvements is the place where public improvements such as streets, sidewalk, curbs, gutters, etc. In this case, we have just the deteriorating parking lot, but it's not in usable condition. Diversity of ownership can sometimes be an issue. In this case, it's only owned by 2 owners, so that's a non-issue. The tax and special assessment delinquency, these do not apply. The owners are not delinquent in any of those areas. Defective and unusual conditions of title. We have not performed a complete title search but believe the title to be secure. Conditions which endanger life or property by fire. Again, because it's vacant land, it doesn't particularly pertain. But there are fire hydrants and existing facilities within the development. Regarding the effects of the present conditions, the results in economic underdevelopment of the area have been widespread. The entire area now consists of underdeveloped or undeveloped property, including the 30 and 40 adjacent acreages. This is a major deterrent to encouraging economic development, partly because of the cost of infrastructure repair, partly because the property is set fallow for so long. It substantially impairs or arrests the sound growth of the municipality. Both I-90 and Celtice and Hutter stop there, can't go any further. The area tends to become an economic liability for the city rather than an asset, both financially and visually. In a conclusion, then, it's a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare in its present condition. That's the 4th test. In this case, this area has become a modest economic liability, and then some people might argue the use of even the term modest in this case, and definitely not a modest visual liability. In addition, the unsafe condition and lack of sidewalks, street lights, could be a menace and public threat. That's a large piece of property, and it's very dark at night. And again, seeing kids and others around there, and also seeing the amount of trash that's not related to that property is clear indication that it's being used at times that it shouldn't be for things it's not intended and not healthy. In the end, the city council and others determine if a property should be part of an urban renewal district. However, in this case, PAC has determined through this report and updating the prior report that this property would be appropriate for an urban renewal district. It meets the qualifications of the two codes that are relevant, Idaho State Code, and the physical inspection of the property. Putting this piece of property into an urban renewal district would allow financing options for the city, possibly grant opportunities for infrastructure. Development of the property could lead to, obviously, economic development through, based on how it's used, even job creation, and increased public safety. The codes in question are on page 9 and 10, if you want to read the legalese. Tony, did you have more pictures you wanted to show of
No,
the subject area?
So I think that just kind of gives everybody a visual of the geography that we're discussing.
In your packet, and I'm sorry I don't have them for the public viewing, but we show this, what's left of the parking lot. You can see in some of your pictures the drainage issues. I'm forgetting that's a microphone. The drainage issues and the misuse of the property itself. Some of the large, your last page, you'll see the large pilings from the raising of the buildings and from moving of the remaining supplies, inventory, and all that of the mill sites. Those are the big piles the children were all climbing all over the other day.
Cynthia, I've got one potential correction on page 6 under deteriorated area characteristics, number 6, diversity of ownership.
Yes.
If you look at the slide, we actually have 3 ownerships because we have the BNSF railroad right-of-way that runs through it and dissects both of those 2 parcels for a 3rd ownership. And I think that, frankly, is one of the development issues that has been faced there. So,
okay. And according to our prior report, and that may have been a change since, the ownership in that was not clear. So we can do more research into that.
okay. Pretty sure it's railroad owned at this point.
That point,
Yeah.
clear through the middle.
Brad?
Yeah, I had a question along that same line, Mr. Chairman. Since one of the owners is the railroad, it seems to me like that would be another reason it needs to be an urban renewal district, because I think that creates a lot of problems trying to develop that property, especially for a private developer, because of how difficult the railroads are to deal with. I'm not criticizing the railroad, but that's just a pretty difficult property owner to deal with. So, where you said that doesn't seem like a reason, it seems like it would be a reason.
No, I didn't say it wasn't a reason. I was saying their clear ownership and future use and intention by the railroad was not clear in our research or the prior report. In 2003, that was not clearly delineated.
Well, you said there was only 2 owners, so that wasn't, I guess that's what you were talking about, and there's 3
Right.
owners, but I think even though there's 2 owners, because one of the owners is a railroad, I think it seems like that does create a problem.
But more reason it should be, as you said, part of an urban renewal district.
I think it's the reason it should be, yes.
Exactly.
Right.
Other questions or
Thank you.
comments from the board? So we have the report. Thank you for that, Cynthia, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We have this report submitted to us for action if we choose, and that action could be to accept the report. Even if we accept the report at this point, that does not have the effect of starting necessarily the process of creating any kind of a new district. Simply sets the table and makes the determination that the area would be eligible for the same. So, Dave.
I've got one other, just kind of a clarification or question. I don't know, it has to do with riparian rights, or how far, are we talking about any of the river bottom, or the river, I guess, out away from the actual shoreline? involved with this study, or do we need to include that? What are the property owners' options, or, you know, how far out in the river, or do we go out in the river when we talk about creating a district? And is there anything in the river that's a greater liability than it's been daylighted what's on the land here?
I can answer a portion of that. When we, as you'll see on the slide, when we, let me back up one slide.
Yeah, you show the boundaries out into the river.
The reason the river district extends out into the river that you see on this slide is that we are able to capture the improvements that are located on the surface, the docks and such, in our tax increment financing solution. So that's why the yellow line extends into the river. It has nothing to do with the subsurface. It's just the surface assets that are developed on that gets included into the district. We've never tested. Mike, we've never tested or had included any river bed issues in the districts that we formed, especially the river district.
Dave, that riverbed, just like a lake bed, would be state-owned property below the mean high water mark. So depending on where you determine that is, particularly an interesting question with the river, given the dam and the fluctuating up and down.
Well, I didn't know if there's piling out there. I don't know if that's an infrastructure improvement. I don't know if the developer would come to us and say, okay, we need to clean that up, you know, because it's a navigation which impacts the value of the property. We can't develop it. I mean, we haven't dealt with those kind of issues before, but I got to thinking, we show these couple of districts, and I know we go out onto the water into the middle of the river in most cases, and I didn't know if we had any inherent or perception infrastructure commitments or liabilities involved with doing that.
Pilings would probably be similar to docks and the like. They're encroachments. They're non-navigational encroachments. There by virtue of state permission, so perhaps. Good question. It's a good question.
Mr. Chairman,
Brad.
I'd make a motion that we accept this report, noting the chairman's comments that this does not mean we are beginning the process of an urban renewal district. We're simply accepting the report.
I'd second that.
Okay, moved and seconded, we accept the report. Tony, we have a draft resolution here that's sort of comprehensive. So, how do you want to handle it, Tony? You want to
Probably just read it. You can just read I can just
the
read
title?
Yeah,
I'll let you read the title.
So the resolution we have in front of the board is Resolution 1401. Just the summary says, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, accepting that certain report on eligibility for certain property referred to as the Atlas Mill Site as an urban renewal area and revenue allocation area, and justification for designating the area as appropriate for an urban renewal project subject to certain conditions. Authorizing the chairman to transmit the report and this resolution to the City Council of the City of Coeur d'Alene, requesting its consideration for designation of an urban renewal area and seeking further direction from the council subject to certain conditions and providing an effective date. So basically what that says is basically what our chairman said, is that this board will accept this report stating that they agree that this could qualify for urban renewal treatment. Then, at the board's discretion, this eligibility report would be forwarded to the City Council of Coeur d'Alene as well as Kootenai County, since a portion of the mill site still resides in Kootenai County, to get those two governing bodies buy-off if they agree that this area does qualify for urban renewal treatment. Given that nod, then they would direct us to go ahead and form a plan. And at that time, we would say, well, we would recommend that this become its own discrete district, or maybe a portion of it be included in the river district through a boundary modification. That would be kind of what this board would choose as a strategy to take back to City Council as appropriate.
But you want to make sure that you add to this motion the changes that the chairman requested to the report relating to the BNSF right away.
We need to correct that finding.
I'd add that to my motion.
And, you know, it sort of piqued my interest when it talks about authorizing me to send this off to the city council, because I think our intent here is not necessarily to do that without further deliberation. So
I think I clarified
it
that my
authorizes me, it does not direct me at this point to.
I think I clarified, hopefully I clarified adequately that my motion was to accept the report, but it did not mean we were proceeding forward with the creation of a district.
And that's what the resolution says at the tail end on page 4. It gives the discretion to the chairman to move this forward at the board's pleasure.
At the board's pleasure.
Yeah, you have my commitment, I won't do it without further direction.
Okay.
So how do we handle the correction to item number 6 here? You just want to say subject to correction of that finding?
I've captured that,
Okay.
and I'll work with Cynthia and her team to make that modification to the final document.
So we have a motion on the floor. Is there discussion? I would just say that I think if you read the report, you've been on the ground out there, pretty obvious that it's a deteriorated area. And actually, Cynthia's verbal report sort of reaffirms to me, having been out there, there are some really, truly unsafe conditions out there. This place is open to be wandered over and driven over, and it is, and lived upon temporarily by some people. So I think it's clearly a qualified piece of property.
Need a roll call.
Other discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call a roll. Roll call.
Commissioner Hassel?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Davis?
Aye.
Caldwell?
Aye.
Hoskins?
Aye.
Truffle?
Aye.
Patzer?
Aye.
Harmon?
The ayes have it.
The ayes have it.
Any nays? No.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Cynthia, appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you.
And please convey our thanks to Greg Cook as well. Anyone else who worked on it? Next item, it would be committee reports. Finance Committee, Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quite a bit of activity this month in our financials, primarily as a result of making our semi-annual debt obligation payments. But let's go ahead and start with the balance sheet of the Lake District first. And in the Lake District this last month, we had a decrease of cash of $951,480. And that was the result of making payments, and specifically our Washington Trust bond principal payment of $914,638, and then McEwen Park payment of $573,714. As it relates to payments that we made on principal during the month under the category of other assets, we did have a principal payment on the ice plant IRA of $13,964. We had a principal payment on Northwest Place IRA, and that's the final payment. So that's why you don't see that on the balance sheet anymore. We have that paid off. The Chamber of Commerce DDA, we had a principal payment of $1,452, and then the 609 Sherman Lofts IRA, we had a principal payment of $2,238. If you go down a little bit further on the liability section of the balance sheet, and you go to mortgages and note payable, which is our largest item on the liability side, we did have a decrease during the month. The math gets a little bit confusing, but basically what happened is we did get a draw from Washington Trust on the bond last month of $575,000. At the same time, we made the principal payment mentioned above and previously of $914,638. And then we had our typical principal payments on obligations of $16,703. If you do the math on those transactions, it results in our notes payable reduction of $356,341. So quite a bit going on during the month, and it's nice to be able to make those semi-annual payments, and especially to have the one obligation paid off in full. Let's go ahead and move over to the profit and loss statement for the Lake District. And you can see for the Lake District, we did receive $204,478 in tax increment revenue for the month. We had some rental income, we had some interest income. The total of all of that is $216,411. If you move down on the expenses part way, you'll see, and I'm just going to highlight the larger items on the report, but you'll see the $573,714 payment on the McEwen Park. And then you move down a little bit further, and you'll see that we had tax increment and increment payments of $25,004. That is principal that we paid on obligations that we had for the month. And then go down almost to the very bottom, and you'll see interest expense of $146,714. That was on the ice plant, Northwest Place, 609 Sherman, the Washington Trust payment, and other loans. The largest item, however, just to highlight it, at Washington Trust, we paid interest of $125,362. So you kind of have a couple things going on. You see where the principal payments were made and also where the interest payments were made during the month. So very active, which it typically is once we receive our increment payments and we start paying our obligations. Any questions on either the balance sheet or the profit and loss for the Lake District? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move to the River District. The River District, on the asset side of the equation, we had a decrease in cash of $158,755, and this was directly related to our semi-annual payments that we made during the month. Mill River promissory note, just mentioned that we made the final payment on that note, and that was $63,964. The other items that we had in the district, there was no principal payment. It was strictly all to interest. And that's quite common on some of our obligations until they build up enough increment for us to make principal payments. If we could, let's go ahead and go to the profit and loss statement. And there you'll see the tax increment came in of $58,027. We had some interest income, so we had total income of $58,235. And then I'll just highlight some of the larger items on the expenses. If you go about 2/3 of the way down on the page, you will see the large item of $63,964, and that is a result of principal payments that we made on our promissory note, and it was Mill River OPA, which, as mentioned, is paid off. Go down a little bit further, and you'll see interest expense of $142,725, and this is interest expense that we paid on Mill River, Riverstone West 1, Riverstone West 2, Mill River Seniors Apartment, and Mill River West Apartment IRA. The largest one was the Riverstone West Phase 1 of $121,451. So that by far was the largest principal payment that we made during the month. Everything else stayed about the same. There wasn't nothing significant as far as changes, but definitely quite a bit of activity during the month. Any questions about the River District, either balance sheet or profit and loss statement? Seeing none, we'll move on to the payables for this month. I believe Tony is distributing those right now. The payables for the month in total, $394,002.87. Just going through them fairly quickly. Elam and Burke, $2,221.50. Holly Troxel Legal Services, $1,674. Molitor and Associates Government Relations, $2,113.86. Keith Erickson Consulting, $1,400. And then by far the largest item this month, although smaller than it was last month in total cost, is McEwen Park Project. We have a bill from CNI for $386,593.51. If you add all those items up, it equals $394,002.87. And then you can look on the right-hand side of the chart and see that our funds left remaining to be paid is $1,595,112. So we're getting close to the end of our payments. I expect now that the weather's better, there's a little more going on, you'll see a much larger request for payment in the next 2 months. So The project's coming along real well. It's kind of nice to go down there and actually walk it and look at it. I did that this weekend, and it's changed quite a bit from where it was. So I do need approval for the acceptance of the financials and also the payables. Are there any questions on the payables?
And we'll hear a motion to accept the financials and approve the payables.
So moved.
Second.
Second, are there any questions on the payables or the financials? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all that I have from the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Rod. Housing Committee. Mr. Goodlander had another appointment to go to, so if you had anything.
I can share one thing on her behalf, is that there's going to be a meeting on the Midtown Mixed-Use Project April 3rd here in this room at 6:30 p.m. Douglas Peterson from the Housing Company will be up joining the mayor and other Midtown stakeholders to discuss the revised concept that has been shared here over the past few months. So once again, April 3rd, 6:30 p.m. here in this room to discuss the Midtown Mixed-Use Project.
Very good. Thank you, Tony.
That will or will not be televised.
I assume since it's here, it'll be televised, but I can't guarantee that.
Thank you.
Parking Committee, Commissioner Jordan.
Nothing new to report, Mr. Chairman. However, we are scheduled for a parking meeting on April 1st, so I'll probably have some news at our next meeting.
Very good. Communications Committee, Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll invite Keith Erickson up to join us to bring us up to date on a couple of things that have been going on, including our latest newsletter.
Welcome, Keith.
So, first of all, as already has been discussed, the McEwen Park project is, after kind of a lull in the winter, is really progressing quickly. And as you stated, if you haven't been down there lately, you should be, because it's really taking shape fast. Some brief updates for the public and for your information on what's going on as we speak with McEwen. Front Avenue, there was one strip of sidewalk in front of the Coeur building on 5th Street that had not been open, and they were finishing that up. So that is finally finished and or not completely finished, but on Monday it will open up, and that will open up that last block of angle parking on that block of 5th Street on Front Avenue. So, which opens up 20 spots, as I said, and those are popular spots too. If you've been down front, you see that people are parking quite a bit there. So, kind of a milestone to have that last stretch of sidewalk open. It looks great too, because at the intersections they have the colored sidewalks, so it's not your typical sidewalks. It's really nice. The crews today, I learned, CNI, the general contractor, and its subcontractors have moved to 7 days a week. Because of some hesitations earlier, they're really on target to finish in mid-May as anticipated. So they're working 7 days a week. They'll be there Saturday and Sunday and working as fast and furiously as they can to get her done. So it's good news to hear. And Brian Taylor with CNI, the president, told me this morning that they will continue that 7 day a week schedule until the project is complete. So they're working full speed ahead. The Front Avenue Park project has included some closures of 3rd Street as we speak, as they move it from a one-way southbound to a two-way. That's included sidewalk work, some curb work, and signalization as you turn it to go both ways. And they're going to be done with that on Lakeside this week. And that will move, that will end on Lakeside this week, and then move to Sherman on 3rd Avenue next week for another 1 week closure. So expect some detours. It's well signed. I'm sure you've all seen there's orange signs all over that are telling everyone exactly where traffic is going, and they're making it as easy as they can. There's also some sidewalk work going on. This has been published in the paper on our website. So we're doing as much communication as we can, because there are some inconveniences downtown through this work. So McEwen's looking good, I guess, is my bottom line there. On another front, we continue to have an opportunity to spread the message on what the LCDC does. Previously, what we've done is taken an opportunity to spread our message on a local blog site called Huckleberries. We discontinued that last fall because work had calmed down at the site. And what that site did, what the opportunity did, was link to a webcam that focuses on the McEwen Park project. Well, since work slowed down, we discontinued the ad. We needed to use those resources to continue it with not a lot of work. But with work picking up, I promised the board last fall that we would revisit this issue to see if it's worth restarting this ad at a nominal, I hate to call it an ad, but restarting this opportunity at a nominal fee of $300 a month. And what it does is it links to the website of LCDC, and front and center is the webcam. The problem with that is, and Mr. Patzer and I talked about this today, is the webcam has not been functioning entirely correctly. Instead of every 5 minutes updating, it's doing it, as Dave informed me, twice a day. So I've got to call into the city to see if we can update that and find out what the problem is with the camera. And so what I wanted to bring to the board was whether or not we should revisit putting that opportunity on Huckleberries back and tentatively revisit that, but not go that direction until we make sure that people are not going to visit click on that ad and go to our website and view the webcam if it's always a stagnant picture or only updated twice a day. So what I'm doing is moving forward with the city to find out what we can do to fix the camera, basically. I mean, it's not that it's broken, it's just stagnant. It's only updating twice a week. So I just wanted to put that out there, and maybe next month I'll have more. I do think it's a good idea if we can get updates every 5 minutes and generate some excitement about it. I mean, you can literally, I know that as things roll on, probably every 5 minutes you will see a change. But so I wanted to throw that opportunity out there, and not with any action from the board, but I will keep you posted on what's going to happen with the webcam. And like I said, we got front and center space on Huckleberries before, and surprisingly, that space is still open to us. They're going to drop down a daily poll, so they'll get it at the same price, same spot. So that's exciting.
Hey, Keith, remind us what the page seemed like. It was like a Launchpad page. It was a special page that it went to. What else is on there besides the McEwen Park webcam?
When you click on that spot, what it goes to is straight to our homepage.
Okay.
So you see our homepage that we've revised lately, and it engages the reader to tell about us. It has a link to join our email list, which you can get to be on our newsletter. It has the webcam, of course. It has the meetings. It has the latest news. It has links to our Facebook page.
Our videos.
And the videos, which is there too, which we're always trying to. So what it does, basically, the short answer to that, Danny, is it takes it to our homepage.
Would it be possible to more prominently feature the current newsletter, so that it was really easy to go right to that newsletter?
It does. It says latest news and review, and maybe I can review that with Tari, who works on this with me. Right now, if you can imagine clicking on this ad, and then it's the home page. So on the right-hand side, it says latest news and review. But it doesn't really tell you it's the newsletter.
Yeah.
But if you click on it, then it does go to the latest newsletter. So maybe we could revise that to let people know.
Rename that. Or I'd be curious to know how many people do go to the newsletter from that ad.
Right.
Placard ad.
Yeah, and I've tried to find that out before, and I don't know why it's such a hard thing to find out, but I can continue to. I know that our newsletter numbers continue to grow. But I think it's a good point that maybe we could reword it to, like, when it says latest news, you don't know what that is. You could say, see the latest newsletter, or something along those lines.
Mick, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at using the Spokesman Review website. What about the Coeur d'Alene Press? So we have both sites.
Good point, Mick. We have done that before, and we did it last year with the press. We didn't have as good of results with the press. I don't have the numbers in front of me. There were about half as many viewers. The press is the local paper is in print, I mean, by far the most read thing. They don't have a whole lot of activity when you compare it to the Huckleberries. So there's not a lot of activity there. I don't know if there's the bang for the buck. I mean, and it's the same price. Okay. So if you're getting twice as many.
Kind of a rolling, what do I call it?
Exactly. Whereas every time you go to
permanent.
Huckleberries, which gets a huge viewership, we're there right on the top prominently. And when with the press, good point, Dave, with the press, every time you pull it up, it's a different ad. So we're not always there, whereas our presence is completely there. But I agree, I mean, that you know, the broader we can be. And then just briefly, our latest newsletter deployed yesterday, hopefully you all got it. I'll just touch on the issues without going too far. The eligibility on the Atlas Mill site, we kind of examined that and the potential for it, anything that could happen, and we had a report earlier, so I won't elaborate on that, but it's an interesting story with a photo of the property, so you can see that it's pretty stagnant right now. There's a lot of potential, but not a lot going on, and I think there's a lot of business interest, but we need the infrastructure. So there's an article about that. The city and LCDC, as you know, met last month jointly, and an interesting question was raised about how do you measure success, and it's kind of an intangible, and we talked a lot about it. Some good points were raised by several board members, and so we highlighted how you do measure success, you know, and how it's not black and white. But so we examined that a little bit. There's a McEwen Park update, which I've already told you about the exciting things going on. And then finally, we profiled in our community Eden Egrins, who is a community arts advocate and has done some wonderful things, and you learn a little bit about her. So that is my report, and unless you have any questions.
Questions of Keith? Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Keith.
Good report.
Thank you.
The other thing I have to add, Denny, is kind of an update on the RFQ for the Four Corners project. Our little three-member subcommittee, Deanna, Al, and myself, had a chance this last week, culminating with, I think, Tony's summation of our comments that went back to Bill Greenwood on the verbiage for the RFQ. So I'd expect first part of April, last part of maybe end of next week, this request going out, and, you know, the process being started for finding the people that will throw their hat in the ring, wanting to take part in the design of that project down there.
Good report. I talked to Bill this morning, and yeah, he's circulating that draft RFQ document around to the various interested parties. So hopefully that gets going here soon.
Right. That's all we have.
All right, and I think, Dave, communications gets to take some credit for Dr. Beck here today too, because that's one of hearing from our interested stakeholders, right? That's
correct.
One of our objectives.
We thank Mick for being the liaison for that.
That's good.
Yeah, well, worthwhile. Okay, Executive Director's report. Tony.
One quick update for the board. I just wanted to share with you that the jobs team that was kind of formed by the Jobs Ad Hoc Committee with the board met yesterday. We're continuing to meet as we continue to refine the strategy for focusing on potential healthcare jobs. It was a good meeting. We're still kind of getting into the funnel and drilling down on what the strategy will be. And basically, NIC came up with the key focus areas of surgery technicians, medical laboratory technicians, and health informatics. I had to look up on the web what health informatics is, but maybe Commissioner Hoskins can do it. But I'll share with you, health informatics is a discipline at the intersection of information technology, computer science, and healthcare. It deals with the resources, devices, and methods required to optimize the acquisition, storage, and retrieval and use of information in healthcare and biomedicine. So basically, they see this as an upcoming job market. Kootenai Health is the main driver. Let me back up. The members of this jobs team are LCDC, North Idaho College, Lewis and Clark State College, University of Idaho, and Kootenai Health. Kootenai Health is a huge job market, and that's what we're focusing on. They view this health informatics profession as a huge growth area. So that is what the institutions are focusing on right now, looking at programming, The next step would be to refine the programming needs down to a pinpoint, and then look at the current conceptual design that we have for the joint use building out on NIC campus or the higher education campus, and then go down the funding path for both programming dollars and capital building dollars. So the long-term goal here is to see if LCDC can be a partner in getting the joint use building built out on the higher education campus that we've been talking about for years, having the right programming in that facility to kind of help the community create jobs, specifically as Kootenai Health is a partner.
All very timely to the Kootenai Health announcement of the major expansion of their facility, which I think they reported would immediately create some space for a couple hundred new jobs anyway.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I have, Chairman.
Any questions of Tony? Hearing none. Board Commissioner comments? See none of those. Public comments, second opportunity. Tom, you want to get up and give us a critique of how we run the show here? Welcome, by the way, Tom Lean, Executive Director of the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency. Nice to have you here. If no public comments, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That's what Troy was here asking for.